Well, I think that there was always kind of an idea of making a comedy about turning 30 before the pandemic, but the quarantine really, I think, motivated a lot of the themes of community, just because I was missing so many people, and I was missing my friends, and I was missing hanging out and laughing and parties. So that was a really big motivator, I think, and shaped the tone of the movie for me.
Yeah, I think so too, especially because I think we both turned 30 during COVID, and what is, thank you, already kind of a milestone birthday felt exacerbated by the fact that we were doing it in solitude. So I think that the germ of the idea of this is an event that's going to have an impact of our life was made even more significant by the fact that it happened in COVID. But we kind of saw the cliff ahead of time when we wrote it, and then we just fell off of it on our own.
Yeah. And we also, a big deal for me was if we were going to ask people to come out of the pandemic and join us on a set, then I really wanted everyone to have the best time that they could, because at that point it was a really big ask to say, hey, I know we've been quarantined for a long time and it's kind of scary, but if you want to come and create this thing with us, we'll keep us as safe as possible and we'll have a good time. I think in at least the queer gay community that I've been around, turning 30 is you're sort of aging out of a certain type of person, and there's all these fears about how attractive you'd be or what your worth is in the community. So in a way, it is a coming of age movie for this particular community, and showing that 30 is not that bad. And I personally, it's kind of a decade in which I've learned a lot more about myself.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's 100% true. I think that there is a sense that being young and being attractive is maybe the only thing that you have to offer. And so what happens when that goes away? And, that fear, I think that we could recognize that that's a silly mindset and a silly thing to be afraid of, but also it's real. So I think that's one of the reasons we decided to approach it as a comedy, to both kind of link to be we know this is silly, but there's truth in it, and there's truth in why it's funny,
I think my background is in improv and sketch comedy, which the muscle is always kind of writing for yourself and finding a point of view for yourself and your comedic take on things. So as I started to write it, it was a version of myself that I wanted to explore. So it was always kind of in the back of my mind that I would play this part. Yeah, for me, I mean, it made it so fun, and everyone had a real ownership of their character, so we were just all allowed to play, and people were encouraged to improvise and come up with character traits that they found inspiring. And so I think that there was a real level of comfort and respect that allowed everyone to do their best work.
And I also think that because we knew a lot of these people so deeply, we knew their sensibility, even as it informed costume. We were oh, well, this person will like this, or this person will get a kick out of this, or this person will think that this costume piece is really funny, or this piece, that we were sort of really influenced by the performer, and with a deep knowledge. And I think that actually helped lift them up, because then when they got that costume piece, they were oh my gosh, I love this. And then it was oh, we knew that you were gonna love it because we've it's based on a private joke, stuff like that. There's just a deeper level that I think was really helpful in terms of getting really specific about the storytelling. We did principal photography, and the goal was not to do reshoots, and we cut it together, and we did a test screening, and no one laughed, and we were uh-oh, something's wrong. And I think part of it was that the original iteration of it was a lot longer. It was 25 minutes. It also, I think, was about too many storylines for a short film. It was about Chris turning 30. It was about him pursuing this new relationship. It was also much more about him and Dana's friendship. There was a lot of really great material scenes that we shot that when it was all strung together, it just felt in such a short time frame too many ingredients. So we had to strip some of those those back, and in stripping some of those back, that like opened holes that we were like, oh well, if we have to take this scene out, then like how are we going to explain storyline A to storyline B, because the like key piece of dialogue to do that was in the scene that was cut. So that's kind of what informed the reshoots, where we went back and we're like, okay, well, like let's kind of reverse engineer certain little bits to like convey that information, but hone in on the like principal storylines. And then also there were just like a lot of like I don't even want to call them cosmetic, but you know, like the pool party is like, this pool party has 3 people in it. This is not a raucous pool party that's set up. So then we had to be like, okay, how do we fill it out? How do we go back and retroactively do X, Y, and Z? And it was cool because there was a lot of stuff when we were doing that like cracked open the storytelling and certain like style choices that we leaned into. So that was really neat too, to like be able to like take a breath, look at the edit, and be like, okay, here's what we have to do to make this like, you know, hit in the way that we want it to hit. We were going to go into that and shoot it in a much more conventional way. You know, that was just the first master that we got, and like because Chris is an improviser, I was like, try to make him laugh, like just like go and see if you can like make him like chuckle a little bit. And so then we shot it, and it was like such a magical moment. And then after that, we went back and did do conventional coverage, you know, of like Chris, and then of Aiden, and we were going to cut it together like sort of normally, but once we saw that long shot, we were like, oh, this is it. And so like very early on, we were like, it wasn't really planned, but we were like, this is basically what it's going to be. And once we saw it, we really held fast to that being the right choice. So even throughout like the editing process or at the reshoots, that was something where we were like, okay, this is the real heart of the movie, so this can't be touched.
Yeah, I think that we kind of found that what we were talking about the whole movie is sort of perceptions from a distance are different from when you really get up close and learn who someone is. And I think that moment really encapsulates that overall theme of the title, that you kind of only get to know someone when you're honest and vulnerable and close.
Originally, we envisioned this as a TV show, and this was kind of the short would sort of be the pilot, and then it's kind of almost what happens like post Happily Ever After, a little bit, in the sense that like he discovers that maybe his relationship with Aiden isn't as dreamy as he thinks, or it's more complicated, or like, you know, the friendship that he has with Dana is a little bit more one-sided, and she starts to take agency, and that leads to conflict, and that like maybe, you know, there's more depth to his ex-boyfriend than we first imagine, and we kind of go into like maybe reasons for why they broke up, and maybe it's like not quite as like clear cut as one would think. So you know, that's like what we would imagine the TV version to be. I think that we all, because we both come from more of like an indie film background, that TV version feels a little daunting, whereas like the queer indie feature version feels maybe more, at least for me, more accessible. So we also have a version of that where it's sort of like pulling out the characters of the short into going a little bit deeper and being able to include some of the storylines that we had to cut, but we wanted to include.
Yeah, I think the goal always in making this was to create a world and characters with a lot of internal conflicts that we could explore in kind of every direction we could possibly think of. So hopefully we did that, and whatever shape that this takes, we're happy to explore.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. Thanks for having us.
Happy to be here.
Thank you so much. I can hold on.